Thank you so much. Deputy Mayor Lamb, can you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you so much. Councilmember Stewart, do you mind doing the land acknowledgement?
Thank you. Our land acknowledgement is a statement that we read to recognize Indigenous peoples who are the original stewards of the lands on which we now live, work, and recreate. The city is a proud partner of the Snoqualmie tribe, and we feel it is important to recognize the history and connection tribes have always had to these lands. Therefore, we will now read our statement. We acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Snoqualmie tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial.
Great, thank you so much. Next, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, 7-0, that is approved. Next, public comment. It's pretty empty in here. I think we'll move straight to online.
If you wish to provide public comment, please raise your hand. If you are joining by phone, please raise your hand by pressing *9. You will have 3 minutes to provide comment, and please start your comment by stating your name and city you live in for the record. We currently have 2 commenters. I will promote the first one. Mary Wichter.
Good evening. This is Mary Wichter. I've lived in Sammamish 22 years. My public comment today is mostly on Tamarack. You should have received about a half dozen emails as follow-up to the public hearing. And for the public hearing on October 4th, you would receive multiple emails, write-ups, photos, short video clips on the issues, flooding, erosion, sediment transport, and silt that we experience in the area, including groundwater seepage, which is getting worse every year. There are real drainage problems. They need to be addressed in Tamarack. There is no easy solution or mitigation. If there was, we would have done it. If you're worried about precedents, there's one precedent I thought of. There is a precedent for the city whenever there is a large problem for stormwater that's done by a CIP, the city identifies it through complaints, and then they do the initial analysis, field studies, hydrology and hydraulic, if there's anything that needs it done, and the design, and then eventually it gets implemented as a project. That has happened over and over for Tamarack in the past. To not list it is disgenuine to the history of the whole city and what's been going on. And it really does need to come forward as a CIP. It cannot be done by a small group or a limited group of people who live at the bottom of the hill. Also, the second reason that you need to list stormwater CIP for Tamarack drainage improvements is Lewis Thompson Road is connected to it. In fact, the overflow areas from Lewis Thompson flow south when they should flow west, and they also flow west, and they do make it to Lewis Thompson. So those flows and overflows do get there, and the engineering and modeling that they're doing for the Lewis Thompson project does need to include the amount of water that comes now and will ever come from Tamarack. There are also public benefits if you allow detention to be done in Tamarack, and you can add catch basins, which would get rid of silt and sediment, make it easier to deal with water quality. I know the Inglewood project has flow splitters and modular wetlands. I don't know if that's being considered, but those are types of things that could be done on private land in public easements for drainage that would help the overall city and provide a benefit. Also, we didn't get to this situation by ourselves. It's not like we owned a system that just is going bad and we did nothing. The city was literally involved in every step and put a lot of development. 40 houses have been developed. There's 40 vacant lots left. 20 of those flow to the West Subbasin. 10 of those are in a landslide hazard area. There are gaps and loopholes from code. When everybody else was getting 2,000 square feet for drainage review, we were getting 5,000. We did get a map change for landslide hazard drainage areas, which was super important. We do have some sewer, but we have a lot of septics, and that fecal coliform flushes down to Lewis Thompson and into Zaccoose Creek. So it really is important to do this. We don't need to resolve all this now, but you do need to list it as a project, as a stormwater CIP in the SW 600s, and have it added to the rate study so that we can talk about it and do things that are right. We need a way to move forward after all these years. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will now promote the next caller. Mr. Stickney.
Good evening, City Council. Paul Stickney, Sammamish. I'm going to read the email I sent today into the public record. My comment has to deal with Agenda Bill number 15 that has several inaccuracies about the town center docket. And this item was and is about far more than economic development in the Southeast Quadrant. It was about a whole host of topics in the entire town center that can have holistic, citywide, beneficial effects. My ask, keep the town center docket as is, do not close it, or do a deeper dive into the multidimensional disciplinary items that are involved in this docket before making a choice. When we turned in our initial docket in 2009, the Southeast Quadrant landowners, it was about commercial space, but it was also about increasing housing. The 2009 docket was voted down by a 5-2 council vote. In 2012, we resubmitted our docket and add several other topics to it. In 2013, we refined and added other placeholder topics. The city of Sammamish voted 7-0 vote in support of our 2012 docket, with decisions to be made from 2013 to 2015. There were 4 steps within the docket. One was to address and prioritize some of our asks within Economic Development Strategic Plan. 2, City Council was to advance some of those prioritized items to the legislative process. 3, those priorities advanced would go to Planning Commission for discussion and recommendation. And 4, City Council would then, deliberate and take action. Well, item 1 happened, item 2, 3, and 4 never happened. The staff packet made it appear that our docket was tied to the Economic Development Strategic Plan. This is simply not true. Our docket was its own thing. EDSP was a separate and distinct thing. Let's jump now to the end. This docket offers a wonderful opportunity to advance the optimal housing growth platform for evaluation and comparison. Optimal housing is about adjusting housing supplies to meet housing needs of our residents over life. Much information has been provided on these topics to the city since 2012. And here's the brass tacks. If we stay with the comp plan, then close our docket. If we go with almost no growth and town center goes to not housing, then close our docket. But if the community decides to optimize housing for all economic and demographic groups over life, then our docket is extraordinary because it allows those things to be done quickly. Our community is 20 to 30 years behind on different diverse and smaller housing options that we need. So
Thank
I'll
you so
finish
much.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
I see no other commenters. Back to you, Mayor.
Great, thank you so much. Next, we have our executive session. We have 2 items, potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101I. Looks like 30 minutes, and we may take action following executive session.
Right, and that has us returning at 7:10.
7:10, thank you. Okay.
The council has extended the executive session. Oh, I gotta unmute myself. The council has extended the executive session to 7:25 PM.
All right, welcome back. Next, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? All right, consent is good to go. Next, we'll move on to presentations, proclamations. Does anyone have the proclamation in front of them or would like to read it? Okay, do you have it? Yeah, great. Thank you.
Proclamation for November 1st. This is November 1st.
I think this is the only meeting we have.
Okay. All right.
Or-
For Extra Mile Day. Whereas Sammamish, Washington is a community which acknowledges that a special vibrancy exists within the entire community when its individual citizens collectively go the extra mile in personal effort, volunteerism, and service. And whereas Sammamish, Washington is a community which encourages its citizens to maximize their personal contribution to the community by giving of themselves wholeheartedly and with total effort, commitment, and conviction to their individual ambitions, family, friends, and community. And whereas Sammamish, Washington is a community which chooses to shine a light on and celebrate individuals and organizations within its community who go the extra mile in order to make a difference and lift up fellow members of their community. And whereas Sammamish, Washington acknowledges the mission of Extra Mile America to create 550 extra mile cities in America and is proud to support Extra Mile Day on November 1st, 2022. Now, therefore, Kaylee Clark, Mayor of the City of Sammamish, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim November 1st, 2022 to be the Extra Mile Day and urges each individual in the community to take the time on this day not to only to go the extra mile in his or her own life, but to acknowledge all those who are inspirational in their efforts and commitment to make their organizations, families, community, country, world a better place.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Howe. Next, we have a presentation for the Arts Commission, DEI sculpture selection.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor, City Council, and Mr. Interim City Manager. I'm Anjali Maya, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Facilities. The Arts Commission has an update this evening on a permanent art project representing diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI for short. This project was initiated by City Council a couple years ago, and the Commission has completed several steps, including coming up with early ideas, options for a suitable location, a short public outreach process for additional funding, and soliciting proposals from artists. Janie Walzer, Management Analyst for our department, will be giving the presentation along with representatives from the Arts Commission. Janie, please take it away.
Thank you, Anjali. Good evening, Council. I'm Janie Walzer, Management Analyst for Parks, Recreation, and Facilities. With me tonight is Megan Zelatrinikoff and Barbara Kraus. They are the chair and the co-chair, respectively, for the Arts Commission. Tonight, we will be presenting an update on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Sculpture Project, sharing the 3 submissions that were received, along with the Arts Commission recommendation, and we are seeking council to select an artist to award the sculpture contract to. This project has evolved over time. It began in June of 2020 at the direction of council for a sculpture that would represent social justice. Arts commissioners performed a community survey and researched design options, which were then presented to council in October of 2020, and that full presentation is in the agenda packet for you. In October of 2020, council instructed the commissioners to create a request for proposal, or an RFP, for the sculpture project and set the budget at $50,000. Staff and the Arts Commission then spent the next year creating that RFP and identifying potential locations. In March of this year, council identified Big Rock Park North as the site for the project and changed the name from Social Justice to Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And this was to reflect the city's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging initiative. So tonight we will be sharing those 3 proposals that we received and are seeking selection of a winning proposal. The location identified, Big Rock Park North, there's 2 areas that are options for us to consider. They can both accommodate a piece for about 10 feet in diameter. On the left side in this picture, you will see the playground zipline area. On the right, there's a slide where children can play. And then in the middle is a big grassy area. And there are gravel paths connecting all of these sites and surrounding the potential artwork areas. Safety of children should be considered, as children frequently run around on the grass and just play back and forth in the park. Option 1, a little closer up, this is by the rock wall. It's closer to the playground, it's closer to the parking lot and the entrance to the park. And then option 2 is slightly more removed from the parking lot. It's closer to the slide, but really in the middle of the park where there's a grassy area with some small mounds. Now I'll hand it over to Megan and Barbara from the Arts Commission, and they're going to be discussing the proposals more in depth for you.
Hi, thank you for your time. The artists responded to the RFP for this project, and all three were asked to create moquettes or scale models of their concepts. The models were evaluated by the Arts Commission, and each artist proposals are included in the agenda bill, so you should have all that information. The goal here is to give you an overview of each artist. This is the criteria that each artist was measured against on the RFP, and this information was provided in the RFP itself. Theme, which is encompassing diversity, equity, and inclusion. Aesthetics, characteristics such as being compelling and original, approachable, skillful, and satisfying. Durability, the work must be able to be outdoors for many years and be in an inaccessible, unregulated public park space. Maintenance, the artwork would require little or no maintenance. And safety, it would be measuring, does it have the features that could cause injury to a person or someone viewing it? And sustainability, would this work fit in a park environment? Proposal 1, Barbara. You're on mute, Barbara.
Here I am. The first proposal was by Haiying Wu, and I apologize for the pronunciation of some of the artists' names, but I'll do the best I can. Haiying Wu is a Chinese immigrant who moved to the United States about 30 years ago, and he feels that society is constantly improving, but that discrimination and prejudice still exist. His vision in his piece is to create a magnificent piece of public art that is both aesthetically meaningful and visually dynamic, as well as it's speaking to the viewer's inner thoughts and appeals in a calm and delicate way. And in the words of the artist, the challenger is an anthropomorphic and witty depiction of a skateboard cat bravely pushing the envelope, conveying a serious theme that in the face of all injustice and hardship, we should all carry forward our skateboard cat spirit, challenge the limit, never give up, and never stop pursuing social fairness. And the material will be made of bronze with colored patina and Corten steel. Total height will be 12 feet.
This is the second artist, Jasmine Iona Brown. She's an African-American artist who focuses her art on the respectful depiction of a diverse individual in a community in her work. Her vision for this project is figurative metal sculptures with powder coat painting, and it incorporates the imagery that reflects the city of Sammamish. In her words, it is her first idea is a series of cut metal sculptures of diverse youth enjoying the park. There would be 5 freestanding silhouettes, 3 to 5 feet tall, and will be painted with brightly colored powder coating. The sculptures will be spread out within the RFP designated areas between the park's entry and overlook plazas. The colors on, I'm sorry. The colors on the left side of the screen reflect the bright colors that she believes reflects our community. These are the direct colors from her proposal. This is Jasmine Iona Brown's second proposal. And in this proposal, her color palette changes. It reflects the neutral tones and are used to reflect the many skin tones of our community. Here, she talks about her second idea is paper dolls. And paper dolls are used in elementary school classes to teach everything from art to reading and history. I want to use these recognizable shapes that many of us made as children to represent our diverse community. This concept is far less representational than the first. It focuses more on pattern and shape. Youthful energy and optimism is reflected in the choice of using childhood crafts as a symbol of inclusion. Each quote unquote paper doll will be made of metal approximately 4 feet tall and powder coated. Barbara, you're on mute again.
Sorry. So the third proposal was sent to us by Leah Nguyen, and her artwork takes an active stance to heal intergenerational ancestral trauma held in our bodies, as well as assisting the earth, the land where she paints the patterns, in healing the unprocessed human emotion that is held there. So the land can heal, and so can our wounds. Her process of making is decolonial and non-traditional. It is collaborative and co-creative with intelligences that are beings of nature. Her works are patterns and geometries which create space for all that is, and yet are very specific. In the artist's words, a reflection space in natural stone and colored concrete. An inlaid stone or concrete pattern on the ground with a cluster of adjacent natural boulders with shallowly carved patterns on them. This could all be set within a perimeter of pea gravel. The boulders would provide a place to rest and sit in the pattern. This sculptural environment would provide a natural gathering point and a place for children to engage the art in play.
The proposals were presented to the Arts Commission at the end of September. Commissioners submitted an evaluation forms for each artist's proposal to determine the final recommendation. Proposals were evaluated against the criteria listed on slide 8 on a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 as the highest. The scores were averaged, and the proposal with the highest score would be recommended to council. The proposal with the highest average score was that of Proposal 2 by Jasmine Iona Browns, The Silhouettes of the Children. This piece was determined to best embody the diversity, equity, and inclusion of our community. A minority of commissioners, 2 out of the 8, believed that no proposal merited recommendation to City Council and recommended reopening the RFP process in hopes of receiving more submissions from which to choose.
So next steps and anticipated timeline, if council does identify and confirm the location tonight, a contract will be prepared with the artist who is selected. The artist is then expected to engage in public outreach with the assistance of staff to hear from Sammamish residents and incorporate their ideas into the final design. Staff will also work with the artist to consider any maintenance or public safety considerations that need to go into the final design. And once those steps are complete, the artist will bring their final design to council for final approval, and then construction and installation would be anticipated to begin next summer. Council has several options to consider tonight. One is what was just outlined, to select an artist tonight, confirm Big Rock Park North as a location. Other alternatives are you could select an artist proposal that was presented tonight, but ask staff and the Arts Commission to seek alternative locations for the sculpture. And another option still is to reopen the RFP request for proposal and hope to have additional proposals to evaluate at a later time. So here are those motions for you to consider. Thank you for your time, Council, and we welcome any questions that you have.
All right, thank you so much. Councilmember Howe?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Barbara and Megan for being here today and for this great presentation. It's extremely helpful, and I appreciate the time and effort you've put into the commission, because I know this is not an easy process. I'm sure that you were probably kind of thinking to yourselves, gee, maybe we should open it up more, because I believe you had a total of 3 submissions. Is that correct? Yeah, that's rough. That's just really rough. I'm not sure that you'd get more, you know, using the same channels that you used before to promote and to extend to try to get more submissions. I'm not sure you'd get more. So that would be an open question for me. I thought the designs were interesting. I think the sculpture or the cutouts that you've selected is an interesting one. I do have a concern on safety. At the height of 3 to 5 feet, based on the imagery that I saw, if a child fell against it, I wondered if they couldn't be severely hurt. You know, if they were pushed onto it or something like that. And perhaps you could help me understand if you've thought about that and you're not worried at all and it'll be fine. So that's one question. The second question I have has to do with how this fits into your overarching strategy as you look ahead to the strategic plan for art for the city. Because rather than doing a one-off, clearly you'd want this to dovetail in nicely. Have you thought about that, and how can you help me understand how this would work?
Barbara, Megan, did you want to try answer that? Would you like staff to respond?
I think I can start to answer question number 1, and that is that artist, Jasmine Iona Brown, has similar work in a library, I believe it's in Kent, isn't it? Southern King County. So I think that is a valid question, and I think it is something that we could reach out to potentially that city and find out if there's anything we could learn as a commission by, you know, on the front end of establishing that kind of art. But I will punt question 2 to somebody else. But I am glad to speak to that at the end.
Yeah, did you say that this art's in the library or outside the library? It's outside the library, right?
I believe it's out front. Yeah, one of the pieces.
But it may not be in a play area.
It may not be.
That's what I'm thinking. Is that it's not in a play area. So I am worried about that. So I'll just register that. And for that other question about how does this dovetail into our strategic plan for art, I just want us to be very conscious and aware of the fact that we're spending $50,000. We'll be spending more. It needs to fit. It needs to be part of the plan somehow. And I'm just wondering if you've spent some time on that, or if that's something you're planning on doing.
I was going to say, Anjali, we need to take care of this.
Sure, yeah. I mean, the council, the Arts Commission has asked to do a strategic plan in a previous budget cycle, and then it didn't go through. So it's something that has been asked previously, and this was a council-directed project, so they've been keeping it going. The right way to do it is to have a strategic plan in place first. So those are our thoughts.
Well, it occurred to me that as you guys were planning this piece of art, that you perhaps have built a shell or a framework for what that plan could kind of look like, and what matters to the city, and what matters to the commissioners who are, you know, well qualified for their roles. So what I'm hoping is that it becomes instructive and becomes that beginning basis, if you will, for some of the aspects of the framework that you want to put together for the plan. So that's what I'm optimistic about.
Sure.
So again, thank you for your efforts.
Deputy Mayor Lamb?
So thank you, staff and commissioners, for all your hard work on this. I have a cold, so I'm not speaking quite so clearly. it's obvious to me that the artists are very talented. I looked at their resumes, and many of them have done pieces of public art in other cities and for other organizations. So they are talented artists and individuals. I am concerned with all three pieces, actually, and I think it's helpful, at least I think the artists would appreciate hearing what some of the concerns are. For the first piece, I don't get the idea of why the artist is using a cat. Like, I think it's a fun piece, and if it weren't for DEI, I think it would be great, say by the skate park. But to me, this isn't, it just doesn't make sense to me as to why there's a cat. The second piece, I appreciate the colorfulness of it, but it is a very literal interpretation. And when we get that literal and you're looking at the piece, if you yourself don't see yourself in the piece, then you're not being inclusive, because they're depicting children. And this goes along with the artist's second proposal too, that, you know, DEI is more than just about a particular age group. It's also about gender, it's about faith, it's about sexual orientation, and none of those other items are addressed by this piece. And the last piece, just by the inclusion of pattern, it would lead somebody to wonder where the patterns are derived from. And there wasn't any rationale or indication as to where those patterns are derived from, like from what culture, etc. Regarding the cost, there was mention there was only 3 artists that submitted. And in looking online, most public art pieces are about, the RFPs are usually about $80,000 to $100,000. And I think that, you know, at $50,000, this is pretty low. And I understand you guys went out and looked for grants, et cetera. I think this is an opportunity where you're going to have to look for private funding if we want to get more submissions and have a wider and cast a wider net. So I am not in favor of moving forward with this until, much like what Councilmember Howe said, that there's a full strategic plan and to identify what the goals are with our purchasing of public art. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor Lamb. This is a tough one because I think it was maybe a council-directed project, but you were only given limited funds originally. So it's like a tough one where either council needs to supplement to equal that, or because, you know, of course, I know you guys have probably exhausted a lot of options. So I'm not sure what to do here either, but I am kind of like the minority of your group. You're 2 for 9. Also thinking either we need to pull back and think more strategically, or council needs to move again some money because we haven't, you know, we're giving money obviously to the Human Services Commission. So is this another thing that we want to supplement this commission to really see this project all the way through? I'm not sure. So I don't know if, you know, anyone else has thoughts or if we entertain a motion to have you all go back, but I don't know if opening it back up is really going to solve our issue right now. So does anyone else have any thoughts or ideas? Or Scott, do you have any magic things to say or offer?
Thank you, Mayor. I think, you know, there's a couple of different ways. If council is uncomfortable moving forward in its current iteration, and it sounds like that is the case, then I think that one of the things that council could choose to direct is to recognize that there is a strategic plan that is recommended in the budget for the Arts Commission, and that perhaps asking the Arts Commission to include this as part of the strategic plan about DEIB, art, and have that be part of that overall process. And I'm looking at the chair and vice chair to see if that is reflective of what the commission could use and take and run with and make some magic happen on your end, if that's a better, more useful way to then come back and ask for the right amount of money for the project based on what the strategic plan calls for. That is one option. Another one would be for, to council, I think a couple of different options were put up on the screen by Janie, and you could choose to take one of those options that they laid out there. Excuse me. So in some ways, the world is your oyster. I do think that, we owe it to the artists that have contributed proposals to be clear about what council's next steps are, what the city's next steps are. So if I may pause for a moment, ask the chair and vice chair if that proposal makes sense. I don't mean to put you two on the spot, but I think it's important to hear your perspective from the commission.
I have to say, I think I got a little confused of what your first proposal was, and I do apologize. I think it's because I'm new to all of this.
No problem. Forgive me, Chair. I sort of rambled a little bit. What I was suggesting is that we pause the project for the moment, that if council so chooses to fund the strategic plan, that comes first, and that this particular component would be included in the strategic plan to say, to identify where the right spot for the art would go if you started from the starting point and said, citywide, what would the plan call for where that type of art should go? And then what is the relative funding approach for that type of art based on what the plan calls for? And that would be one approach. And that's what I was saying. Does that make sense from the commission's perspective, from your two perspective, I guess I should say?
I think it's, so I'm not very political, so I'm sort of going, and this is why, so I will tell you, this was brought to council, the timing of it was right after what happened to George Floyd, and that this was, so this has been on as tasked on us now for 2 years. And my concern as a citizen and as a representative on the Art Commission is that this keeps being pushed down. And this is something that I think our community, whether it's one of these artists or not, like we voted, whatever, but I do feel that a level of concern that we aren't addressing this, and we aren't choosing a project. I wonder how much that speaks to who we are. And I'm not saying it has to be one of these. This is sort of as a personal opinion, and I am trying to do this on the spot. But we did ask for more money, and we do think that, I think we all agreed on the Art Commission that we probably would have received more RFPs. So and if we halt everything for the strategic art plan, what are we looking for in the future on a timeline for something like this? But I'll stop talking and
No, we totally appreciate it. Yeah, I think too, I didn't realize this was 2 years old, 2+ years old either. I mean, obviously I've only been here however many months, but that's a super helpful perspective. And that's kind of, I think some of us are thinking, I think all of us have said this probably needs more money, not we want to stop it, but I think it needs more. So I'm going to go back down. I think I'll start with Councilmember O'Farrell because I don't think you've spoken yet. Yeah, I think that's, thank you, Chair, for mentioning George Floyd, and that's a piece that I was completely unaware of, and I didn't realize that this project was kind of in response to that particular event, and I would agree with you that it warrants like a response on our part, and through art is a very great way to respond to that, and I concur with your concern that it might feel like we're kind of dropping it, and that's what our response is. So I wouldn't want that to be confused with that, because that's not how personally I would feel about it, and I would concur with you. I was excited when I saw your packet to go through the various options, and I thought that I wasn't really thrilled with the options that were put forward to us, and I think that I kind of concur with what's been said about a strategic art plan. I think just from a wider perspective, and the point of this project aside, is that I think we do need to do something probably in conjunction with the Parks Department, is like, what is the role of art in our city? Where do we want to see it? What does it say about who we are in our community? And how are we broadcasting that to our community? And does the community notice it? Do they interact with it? And do they understand the art pieces that we've selected over time? So that's kind of a side or general issue. But this particular project, I think, I'm glad you brought up the origin of it, because I didn't fully appreciate that. I'm still not sure that I would pick any of the pieces that have been proposed, but it does give me a different perspective, and it makes me feel like I don't want to say that this project is done. Maybe we just need either more money, or we need to think about it a little bit more. But I fully support what the Art Commission is doing, and I really do want to respond to that particular issue that's happened in our community, and not kind of just say, oh, we tried, but we didn't like what we were given, and so we're just moving on. I don't want to do that. And I know that the Commission has put a lot of time into this, and I don't want to ignore your volunteer hours and your dedication to this. So I think maybe we need to either have a rethink and come back and think about how can we improve this project and come up with a better solution. Because I think what was proposed, all of those art projects in themselves are fine, but I don't know if they really speak to what we're trying to communicate, and if it's certainly in relation to the George Floyd event. So I think we may just need to take some time to think about it again, and but not forget about this project, because I think that's really important. Councilmember Treen?
Yeah, so I would just say that I like option 2, where it's between the grassy mounds as a location. So, and the reason why I like that is that it's far enough away from any redevelopment that might take place on the roadway. The other thing is that it's proximity to the zip line and where children do play. And some of the overlooks to the wetlands and the natural areas is really nice. The envision that I always had for this project, whenever 2 years ago we started looking at it and commissioning the Art Commission to take a look at it, was something similar to what Kirkland has done down at their waterfront with the children that are running down the slope to the gazebo there to the water. And so the children's, so thank you, by the way, for having an artist who would bring that forward. And so I do like Ino Brown as your selection. And I like the idea that you are, if the council were to move this forward, that she would engage the community as to what that final project would actually look like. So that leads me to two, I don't even call them concerns, just observations. Is the Paper Dolls is a multicultural presentation of what we teach in schools to our kids. And so I see where she's coming from. I understand why she probably put that together that way. And that's a good option as a baseline to say, hey, does this meet your criteria for what you are trying to communicate? And then so good job. Does it have to be Paper Dolls? I don't know. Should it be multicultural in its color palette? With what we were actually trying to do, I would say, yeah, that's a good move. It doesn't meet all the diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging pieces, but it definitely meets that multicultural piece of it, which is part of that, to say this is who Sammamish is or would like to be, and we're accepting. The other pieces, the key to those pieces would be talking with the artists through community interaction as to who those characters actually are, and so maybe at that point, if we could push that a little bit on the envelope towards diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, that the pieces aren't just all children, because grandmothers and moms and dads bring their children to the park, and so in there lies maybe the challenge to say, yeah, I like the kids aspect of it, but to take the concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging to a broader scope, that's what the artists, we would have to have conversations with the artists to say, hey, what are those figures actually going to be? And the colors, that's fine. You know, if they want to do multiple colors and different primary colors or even secondary colors or some blend, that's okay with me as well. But personally, I think I really like what you got, where you're headed, and would like to see it move forward. Thank you.
Councilmember Andapure.
Great. I just want to start with saying thank you to the commission and the commissioners. At one time, I was an alternate on the Arts Commission, so I've been through some of these discussions. And also, I'd like to acknowledge that October is actually a National Arts and Humanities Month, so what an appropriate presentation this month. I think one of the focus that that for me is in this month is, how do we focus equity and equitable access to the art and art projects that we have in our city, and also allowing us as a city to show support for art and how art enriches our communities, and also raising public awareness about the positive impact of arts. So with that being said, again, thank you for the three proposals. I think one of the questions that I had was when the commission or, along with the staff, when you opened up the RFP, was there certain criteria that you used? Because I saw all of the three people that applied are all people of color. That's my assumption. Maybe I'm not right, but I think that was really good to see. And then I know funds have been brought up a lot. Was that a constraint even in the artist applying for the RFP? Because I would really like to see more proposals come through and more ideas. So that was the question that I actually had for the staff and the commission.
The dollar amount would have definitely had a bearing. Had there been more funding, we would have potentially seen more applicants. But we also have to keep in mind that the cost will be partially for the art and then also partially for landing it on any given site. So if we are increasing the budget, we have to be also clear in a future RFP as to, is the amount all inclusive, including the foundation, the pea gravel, or is it just for the art?
That's good to know. And then I know Deputy Mayor Lamb asked this question, but did we, as part of this funding or grant of, I think it's $50,000, did we also go out and ask for businesses to sponsor or to provide any funds? Did we solicit that as well, or that was not part of this process?
There was a request of the Arts Commission by Council to close the gap in funding by reaching out to nonprofits in the community as well as the public. And the commission members have changed and staff have changed, but there was a process that was followed. I believe the commissioners did meet with a few organizations. We also had posted it on our website and tried to solicit support from the community. And actually, could have been the pandemic, could have been, not sure why, but we did not receive any funding, any additional funding.
Great, thank you. And I again want to reiterate, art is so personal. At the same time, you guys are trying to bring in art which can be very public and accessible to all. So it's a very tough challenge, and I really appreciate everybody's time and effort that you've put into this. So thank you.
Councilmember Howe?
Well, what I was going to suggest as another option to consider is that you followed a process. The artist followed the process. You came to a conclusion. To disable you at this point would be unfortunate. I do wonder, though, is it possible that providing the feedback that Amy did, for example, that was really good feedback. And I wonder if you could select an artist. Jasmine Iona Brown, for example, give her the feedback and say, how do you respond to this? What would you do to create that piece that isn't maybe so difficult to identify with as if you're not clearly represented there? And see if she's able to rise to the challenge and respond, because that will A, take time, which is good. B, it allows you to move ahead with the decision that you already came to. And C, that gives us time to think about, do we add some more money to the pot? And I think it's a possibility that that the timing could work out then to have it fit more into our plan. But I do think that you guys have done a good process. I just want to find a way to enable it and not delay because of us.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Councilmember Howe. And Janie, if you wouldn't mind just covering what the next steps are as outlined in the RFP. So like the artist expects to work further on this, right? The shortlisted artist, if you could just repeat that.
Correct. Yes. So the next steps would be to engage in a period of feedback from the community, open house events, things of that nature, and also communicating with staff our concerns, such that you brought up today about the safety of the piece and the location. How can we make them more visible, less potentially harmful to people if they ran into them? So that would take, there's no real timeline on that. If it took 2 months is kind of what we were thinking, but if it took longer, that's not prohibitive to the plans. So that would be the next step. And then of course, council would approve the final. We'd come back and kind of do this whole situation again, and you could give your feedback and approve it, or maybe the final design has more tweaks, and that's sort of what it would look like.
Yeah, thank you, Janie. And so to add to that, council there is more work to be done if there is a preferred artist tonight, and we would bring that back to council. And in the case of this specific piece of art, we would likely work through some of those risk management issues, since it is in a play area. And if the outcome of that is an alternate site, we could come back to council with the preferred design and maybe a different option of a site as well.
Deputy Mayor Lamb?
I do want to say that it takes time to create good public art. It takes time to find a good artist. It takes time to fundraise. And I appreciate what Councilmember Howe just said about providing the feedback. And I would definitely welcome the artists responding to that request. However, we still don't have a strategic arts plan. And I do think that needs to come first and foremost. So I do not support moving ahead with this project as it is right now. And if there's no other questions, I'd like to make a motion. I motion that we pause on the creation of the DEI sculpture and reopen the RFP process after the strategic plan for public art is completed.
All right, I do not have a second. Did anyone else want to make a different or amend? Sorry, there's hands up. Councilmember Howe, are you first or Councilmember Treen?
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm so sorry.
Councilmember Treen.
Yeah, I make a motion to award the contract for the DEI sculpture to Jasmine Iona Brown and identify the location as option number 2 at Big Rock Park.
All right, that also does not have a second. Any amendments on that one? Councilmember Stewart?
No amendments. I'll
Okay.
wait for that to.
Oh, another one? Okay, so that one fails. Councilmember Stewart?
How about if we move to take the money that was allocated to this and move up the strategic planning for the Arts Commission so that we can hopefully get this taken care of sooner rather than later? I know that's scheduled in the budget for next year, but we could take the $50,000 here and get that going. So hopefully we could get it done rather quickly and potentially still be able to get a diversity and equity art piece out into the community sooner. So I move, similarly, I was going to, give a second to Deputy Mayor's motion with a potential amendment, which is that we pause on this and reprioritize the strategic plan and allocate the money that would have been spent on this to that strategic plan starting as soon as possible.
I can second that.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion or any other thoughts? I don't see hands, so I'm just making sure. Councilmember O'Farrell?
You know, I have to say that I'm not sure how I feel about any of this. I feel for the Arts Commission who came before us today to get an answer and to move forward with this project. And I wasn't expecting to go down the strategic plan for art in the city, although I do support that notion, and I think we do need to kind of figure out what is the role of art in the city. And we have numerous pieces around City Hall that need a better home than it has. We have art around the city that I'm not sure even the general public know that we have, because we have it located in areas where no one can go and actually touch it and take a photograph by it or interact with it in any way. But I am drawn to this, having heard the Arts Commission and hear their kind of motivation behind this project, and kind of drawn with it. And I do concur to part of Councilmember Treen's motion about moving this forward is just the location I'm not crazy about. I'm not sure if at Big Rock Park North is where it needs to be. So maybe if part of the motion could be that the location could be discussed further with the artist, and that the artist has had an opportunity to interact with the community and get feedback from the community about where it should be placed and maybe modifications to the piece. That I would be supportive of, but I just don't know about completely walking away from this, and I feel like we're just kind of pulling the rug from underneath the commission right now, and I would like to kind of move this particular project forward, but yes, moving forward with the strategic art plan also. But I'm not in favor of just halting this right now.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, I do appreciate that, and I want to call out to the Arts Commission and the chair of the Arts Commission that this is long overdue. This was something that the council, asked for, and I appreciate the work that the commission has done and the artists. So I don't know if there's another sort of middle of the road proposal that we could have, because I struggle with. I mean, honestly, I go to Big Rock Park often, that park, and I'm not really thrilled with either of those locations either, because there's often kids and people and dogs running around there. And while I want people to interact with the art, I don't want the art to interfere with the workings, right? Like, I don't think we should have anything close to that zip line, because when kids are running around that zip line, they are zipping. And I'm not sure a piece of art would work well there. So I don't know if there are any ideas for some way to get started on the strategic plan and keep this art as something that we could move forward with as soon as the commission felt like they had viable locations, maybe. And it could be at the top of the agenda. I don't know if that's even possible. I don't know if the artist would be willing to wait.
Are you amending?
No,
anything?
I'm kind of
Just-
more just throwing it out there to see,
Okay.
as we're discussing this motion, just to figure out if we can find a resolution that everyone can be comfortable with.
Okay, we do still have that motion on the floor. So Deputy Mayor Lamb? So the motion right now is to halt this project, put the $50K towards a strategic art plan, and then come back.
Start it right away.
To us eventually, I believe. So starting right away on the strategic plan.
Can I make a comment on that? Sure. So, by pausing it doesn't diminish DEI's importance. It is a top priority for the city, and we just began our DEI efforts. And, that effort is going to be years. I mean, it's, anytime we embark on something this large, it's going to take years. It's not just a one and done thing. And to me, in many ways, this DEI sculpture is a part of that. It is that important. And, we should be thoughtful in choosing the art, and because it's going to be there for a really long time. So I do think having a strategic plan and really figuring out what the vision is for what we want for our public art, and having a strategic plan that identifies the location of where this important piece of art goes is important. And, it shouldn't be something that we just get done just because it's been, on the calendar for a couple of years and it started a couple of years. So thank you.
So we still have the motion. Are you speaking to the motion? Councilmember Howe?
Yeah, I don't support Councilmember Stewart's motion. To Deputy Mayor Lamb's point, we're not doing one and done. Well, I think that's true for DEI art too. This isn't one and done. We'll do more. It will likely be part of our strategic plan, but waiting isn't the best answer here. This is not. We wait too long we take too long. We take too long. The group has come to a decision. I trust the commissioners to make a good decision. They have picked an artist. It will take time to consummate the final design. We have time to pick the right place for that. And it might be that it is maybe close to the library where kids won't decapitate themselves, which is what I'm seeing in my head. So, and that we could come up, that this artist will come up with something wonderful. To Amy's point, wonderful artist. Wonderful artist. And there's an automatic timeline. So, yeah, I'm not going to support that, even though I'm the one that came up with we should do the strategic plan.
Okay, as far as hands go, are you, okay, Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, I don't know, but for this kind of art, it feels like they have to know the location before they can complete the design, right? When you're doing art, big art in that's location specific, I'm not sure. I mean, I think we'd have to ask the artist that, but it certainly feels like they would need to know if it's in a library or in front of a library or in a park, because I feel like scales might change and the number of pieces might change. So I'm not sure we can just say, go design something and then we'll figure out where to put it. So I'm not sure what the right answer is here, and I'm hoping we can come to something, but I appreciate the offer of a, what's a middle of the road thing, but I can't imagine you could design a piece and then just plop it anywhere on this scale.
And we still have a motion on the floor. Is this for that motion? Are you speaking to it?
I was just looking at the options.
We still, yeah, so just for the motion on the floor, do we have any other comments or amendments? Okay, so we are going to take a vote. Yes, so the motion currently is halt the
Mayor, if I may,
project. Yes,
shortly,
please.
I believe I saw the chair had her hand up before you did
Yes,
that.
please, sorry. Go ahead, Megan.
Hi, thanks. So I'm not super professional and I haven't been through the Roberts rules, but I feel like, we've been here once under directive of City Council. We went back, we met and said it wasn't enough money. We were told to go back and look for individual grants, which we did. We said it still probably wasn't enough. We came up with locations. This is the location that City Council directed. And we came then, based on direction of City Council's previous vote, we came back to confirm the art. We were redirected, and now we're being potentially redirected again. And I mean, I'm just, personally, it's frustrating, but whatever. But I worry that, yes, a strategic plan is going to give it a longevity. But when I was trying to understand and present to the commission, to Art Commission, how long a strategic plan would take to go from beginning to go, we were told on estimate, it's probably 9 to 12 to 15 months. So then we're talking another 9 to 12 to 15 months, and we're going to have some broad ideas, but not specific. And what is the expectation? Like, and this is where I don't understand politics. When do we get direction that we go with? Like, then is the strategic plans designed to tell us where all of our art should go? And then we can come up with accurate RFPs. I'm just looking for like how this is landing on the community of like, every time we move in a direction, we're told to revisit it. And I guess that's just public comment. I guess I'm not really asking. It's a rhetorical question, but this is what it's feeling like. And we've put, we just don't know when we're going to get direction that we actually can move forward with. So I'm not saying this is the art or in the space or anything, but I'm just looking for like, when is it the right thing for us to move forward with? When is it worth the artist's time, the Art Commission's time? So that's it. Sorry, unpopular comment.
Thank you, Megan. I think we feel like that a lot, all of us, in anything. So we are going to vote on this. Do I need to repeat what we're voting on? Yes. Okay. So right now, the motion is to halt the project, move the 50,000 from this RFP to accelerate and starting the strategic arts plan now. And hopefully one day we would come back and get back to this DEI sculpture. Is that about right? Okay. And then open back the RFP after we have a strategic arts plan. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay. Nay.
Okay, so by a vote of, well, now it's backwards, 2 to 5, that motion fails. And I don't know where we're going to go next. Councilmember O'Farrell.
So, Mayor, I'm just looking at the council options that have been given to us on the agenda. So option 2 was to select an artist from the proposal presented, then request that the Arts Commission and staff work to identify additional locations to consider. And I would propose that that's the option that we choose tonight.
I second that.
Is that your motion?
Second.
Okay, moved, seconded, I think twice. Any discussion on that one? To go with option 2, I heard you. I think everyone else heard you. Okay, Councilmember.
Sorry.
No?
that was
Okay.
wrong.
No, you're good. Wrong button. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
All right, 6-1. Please proceed with, is it Jasmine Iona Brown Yeah. And I know you'll come back and give us great feedback. And I'm not really sure, Anjali, if I know, is it Janie? You also explained the next steps.
Yes, and so we'll get with the artist and the Arts Commission and work through the next steps of getting some community input, refining the art, identifying alternate locations, and then come back to council.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Barbara. I really appreciate it. And Janie and Anjali, everybody. How are we doing, council? Are we good for the next? Does anyone need a break? Okay, we're good.
Thank you, council.
Yeah, thank you. So next, informational report on Stormwater Management Action Plan, item number 12. Audrey.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. I am Audrey Sarcy, Interim Public Works Director. And as the team comes on board, I'm actually just going to hand this item right off to Stephanie Sullivan, the city's Stormwater Program Manager. So Stephanie, whenever you and the team are ready, please go ahead.
Thanks, Audrey. Good evening, Council, Mr. City Manager. I'm Stephanie Sullivan, Senior Stormwater Program Manager. Tonight, we will introduce the Stormwater Management Action Plan, commonly referred to as SMAP. This is a new permit requirement for the stormwater program. This effort will build on past stormwater planning activities and is being implemented in a phased approach to develop an action plan for a high priority area in the city. And I'd like to introduce Toby Kanan, our Senior Project Engineer managing the project, and he will be assisted by Joel Prock of Geosyntec Consultants, who will be presenting this evening. So go ahead when you're ready.
All right. I believe I'm unmuted and ready to go. Now, first off, thank you, Council and Mayor and Deputy Mayor for participating tonight and receiving this information. And thank you for the introduction, Audrey and Stephanie. As noted, we are here to talk about the Stormwater Management Action Plan. I'm joined by Joel Prock tonight with Geosyntec Consultants. Excuse me, Joel, take a minute to introduce yourself if you'd like.
Yeah, thank you, Toby. My name is Joel Prock. I'm with Geosyntec. I'm a stormwater engineer. I've worked in the past with the city, most recently on the Laughing Jacobs Basin Plan, which was adopted a few months ago, I believe.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Joel. As we noted, we're here to talk about the Stormwater Management Action Plan. That's interchangeable with SMAP or SMAP. And to further confuse matters, ecology says that is either a noun or a verb, so accept that for what it is. I'll offer a quick word about where this project sits within the broader Public Works program. As you noted, it is part of the Stormwater program, and it is within our NPDES permit compliance efforts. Excuse me, one of the special conditions of our NPDES permit is a requirement for the city to develop a stormwater management program. And within that, we are to include a planning element. And the SMAP is a key portion of that planning effort. The SMAP is geared toward improving water quality and habitat within a basin by addressing long-term impacts that result from land development. SMAP is the part one. We can expect, excuse me, ecology to impose additional requirements, like implementing the plan recommendations, and then including locations beyond the discrete area that's being studied by the SMAP. Our goals tonight are quite simple. We wish to provide council with an understanding of what the SMAP effort is, and also give you folks a quick update on where we are with it. The action plan is comprised of 3 discrete elements, including a receiving water assessment, receiving water prioritization, and then finally the SMAP. Ecology established these 3 unique deadlines to comply with the overall planning effort. They're identified by the open stars on the timeline shown here. The city recognized several years ago that Ecology would implement the action planning requirements, and in response to this, we retained a consultant, AHBL, in 2019, and they helped us develop what became the Stormwater Retrofit and Guidance Manual. This document successfully provided the basis for the first 2 action planning elements, the receiving water assessment and the prioritization. In fact, we used portions of the retrofit strategy to meet our first 2 action planning deadlines. Our permit coordinator, Lisa Weir, submitted those last September as part of our annual report. So we were able to get those in well in advance of the deadline. The third element is the SMAP, and we are tracking to have that completed on time in advance of the March 31st deadline. Very briefly, the receiving water assessment started with a list of the city's different drainage basins, and then we compiled the different data and characteristics unique to each basin. This information presented here comes straight from the retrofit strategy. The next effort is a prioritization portion. And it takes that information from the assessment and looks at the relative importance and degradation within each specific basin. The information is then plotted on the graphic that's shown on the lower right. This graph's actually kind of the go-to tool for this exercise. It's something that the Commerce Department developed as part of their guidance manual. It was developed really to help cities prioritize resource use. This is the Building Cities in the Rain handbook that they produce. The final element of the action planning is the SMAP, which is what we're here for. Ecology requires the SMAP to consider 3 unique strategies. The first is facility retrofits. And these are the physical improvements that we can make to existing detention ponds and other infrastructure so that these facilities meet current needs and address some of the existing problems and do so according to more effective water quality and flow control standards. The second strategy involves land use or development strategies. This could mean implementing basin-specific development requirements. Another option, as we noted, is property acquisition, things that explicitly impact how land is used within a specific basin. The final strategy involves efforts to target existing land uses or activities that impact the basin. An example of this might be the unique maintenance program for an industrial facility that's known to have an impact on water quality. Sammamish, as we all know, is a fairly homogeneous community with relatively small variation in land use and development patterns. And as a result of that, the SMAP will tend to emphasize retrofits over some of these other strategies. And I also mentioned, a couple of the available tools that we identified. These are examples of resources that we can call upon, different programs or, documents that have been implemented within the city. Some of these obviously cross across different strategies. It's by no means an exhaustive list here, but it does give a sense of, that we do have a lot of different resources and opportunities to pull from. There's some important points to consider here. First, the SMAP is a regulatory response. There's a specific permit requirement that says thou shalt do this, and it's pretty prescriptive in terms of how we do respond. We are not, I think it's safe to say, creating city policy here. The policy effort, if you will, took place through the retrofit strategy. So the SMAP effort here is really building off of the retrofit strategy resource. The second point I'd want to make is to note some of the permit language. The SMAP notes that we must present a plan for what they can characterize as a high-value drainage area or catchment area. We do not have to prepare a plan for the highest value area. So we do have some flexibility to kind of pick and choose what is more consistent with some of our broader efforts, such as our CIP, some of the council priorities and what have you. The third item I want to draw your attention to involves the ecology's expectations. We can infer from the permit language that there's a pretty explicit expectation that the SMAP needs to be both actionable and enforceable. We need to present a doable solution, and ecology anticipates having, some language in there that will, make sure these things happen. There'll be timelines to bring these things about. The second point is that an implicit expectation. We can expect SMAP requirement will eventually be expanded. Realistically, it'll ultimately encompass the entire city. And then finally, the last part is feedback. We've frankly had almost no feedback from Department of Ecology directly. We've had a lot of discussions with other East Side communities, and this is fairly consistent. So ultimately, it's kind of left to us, the communities, to figure out, how we're going to pursue this. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Joel for, a progress report on where we are headed.
Yeah, thanks, Toby. So Geosyntec's first task for the SMAP project was to review the city's retrofit strategy to make sure that it's consistent with the SMAP program requirements. So in that review, we found that it does, in fact, align with those permit requirements. And we noted these 5 priority basins that were indicated in that document as well. So these are listed in decreasing order. So Laughing Jacobs is the greatest priority. And as mentioned earlier, this graphic on the right was used to visualize those high priority basins based on degradation and importance. Next slide, please. So moving forward, the first thing that we need to do is identify that one high priority catchment that Toby mentioned earlier. And I want to take just a moment to highlight what the term catchment means, because it's a little ambiguous here. So on the right, we have a schematic of the Laughing Jacobs Basin. So that's a bold red line around the whole area. And then when Toby clicks, it'll zoom in and we'll see the smaller, thinner red line. And that is a catchment for just Queens Bog. So a catchment is far smaller typically than a basin. So we're talking about retrofits in a smaller footprint, a smaller area, and not an entire basin plan. So that's where this is a little bit different than what we've talked about in the past. So to get to the actual plan that will be submitted, we'll look at those retrofits, land management actions, and development strategies that Toby mentioned earlier. And then once we have some of those identified, we'll walk through modeling and conceptual design. And then we'll rank the projects using the CIP prioritization criteria adopted by council. And then we will develop an implementation and adaptive management strategy plan to go along with this. And then all of those things will be compiled into one cohesive report. And we will submit that to the city at the end of February, and the city will submit that to Ecology at the end of March. And throughout the whole process, we want to give a couple of presentations to the public and to the city, similar to this presentation, really, just a quick update of what we're doing. And then I'll hand it back over to Toby to finish this up.
No, thank you, Joel. As you said, we're anticipating, having the draft plan, or the final plan rather, wrapped up by the end of February. We will have a council update in January. The expectation is that a draft will be available for council input. Again, the public input will be, largely dissemination of information, presenting, the progress and what have you that we've made on this SMAP. all of it in service toward getting this submitted to ecology in a timely manner. That does wrap up our formal presentation. And with that, I'd like to thank council. And we'll turn things back to Audrey and the mayor for any questions that may have.
I'm just making sure you don't have anything, Audrey. I can't see you.
Oh, so sorry. I was just
That's
going to
okay.
actually ask Toby if he could please stop sharing his screen so that we could see all the participants. Thank you. Back to you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Treen?
Okay, so Toby, before you run it down though, really quick, can you go back to the priority, high priority? Okay, you can leave it there too. Let's go there first. Let's just, because I got a question here. So I get Laughing Jacobs Creek, but we also are aware that we only have half the basin because Issaquah has the other part of it, correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
yeah.
thanks. And then the headwaters or the majors, I mean, I'm kind of, where does Beaver Lake fall into that as far as, you have the line that doesn't actually include Beaver Lake in the Laughing Jacobs Creek, but doesn't Beaver Lake actually flow into Laughing Jacobs Creek? Am I missing that?
That is true, yeah.
Okay.
And for the purposes of the definition of the basin, Beaver Lake has traditionally, if you will, been segregated because it does have such unique characteristics. And it from the standpoint of studying, there's really, they're kind of like two separate exercises. We realized that very quickly with the Laughing Jacobs Basin Plan. And before we even produced a request for proposals for that, we made the decision to, segregate that as a standalone basin.
So do you count that? Could we identify that as one high priority catchment? Is my question. Is Beaver Lake a high priority catchment similar to the bog?
Yes, with the caveat being that there's significant upstream area as well.
Yes.
But yeah, to your point, that it could be identified as such. Similarly, Pine Lake could.
Okay, answered that next question. Thank you, because I was going to mention that Pine Lake would also then could be identified as one of our high priority catchments as well.
Correct.
Okay, then, and if you could flip to the next one where it's the prioritizing. Yeah, thank you. That one right there, because I see how Laughing Jacob Creek kind of is pushing to the top of the scale. But I did want to mention two others here, Thompson and Inglewood. Inglewood also pushing up near the top, and then Thompson is under protection and restoration. When you were talking about the land use piece that is required by law, is the use of LID development, low impact development, is that part of that requirement for the SMAP programming when it comes to land use?
Yes, it could be in the sense that currently there's blanket regulations, that are applied to the entire city. What could be brought to bear would, be specific requirements in an individual catchment where, LID facilities, more restrictive ones could be imposed, for example. That's the type of, look, if you will, that specific strategy represents. Another one too would be, downzoning, for example. And this is I don't want to say a problematic one, but it does have tentacles that extend well beyond stormwater, in that, some of these things, ultimately affect land use in a way that would require SEPA review, commerce notification, and then just general review for conformance with growth management. So there's a fine line there between, what we can take on our own as a stormwater utility versus efforts that would expand into, additional departments, if you will.
Well, and wouldn't that then lead to policy from the council?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of circles back to the initial comment that this is really a regulatory response versus a policy-driven exercise.
Toby, thank you for your work, and I know this is also one of those processes. I think you guys have been at it. Well, I've been on the council for quite a while, but about 18 months of work has gone into this stuff. So I really appreciate the. Oh, and one last question, kind of play a Columbo here, but flow control. Where does flow control work in that? Is that policy, or is that also part of the SMAP?
That's part of SMAP, and where that really comes into play, for example, is in the retrofit work, where we've got ponds that might be 40 years old, and the regulations that were, brought to bear at that time are significantly different than what's in place now. And through retrofitting, we can, greatly improve the performance of those, to be consistent with the current standards.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you, Councilmember Treen.
All right, I don't see any other hands. Thank you, Toby, and thank you, Joel, as well. This is just a presentation informational, so next we will move on to unfinished business, and I believe everybody except Joel gets to stay on. Cool. All right, go for it, Audrey.
Thank you. Just one moment, please, while I get my presentation up here. Okay, we're back. It's a stormwater evening. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. So this evening we are presenting our final stormwater CIP. With me to answer questions, our Senior Stormwater Program Manager, Stephanie Sullivan. And I will share my screen. That would help if you could see my slides. Okay, so this is, we're several meetings into our stormwater capital plan. We are hoping that council will consider adopting the plan this evening, and we are just here tonight to present our final updates to the plan following our public hearing that was closed on October 4th, 2002. In your agenda packets, you will find Exhibit 2 and 3 that comprises our stormwater capital plan. We had some changes to both of those, so wanted to make sure that you were aware of those changes as we present our final plan this evening. The Exhibit 2, we had a few changes. Like I said, one of them is we added a footnote just to make sure that everyone was aware that all of the amounts shown were in 2022 dollars, with the exception of SW 608, which is our property acquisition funding. Toby was just mentioning that in the last presentation as well as a tool for SMAP. That amount was reduced from $500,000 a year to $250,000 a year so that it more formally aligns with our 2016 Storm and Surface Water Comprehensive Plan. And finally, the amounts for SW 601, which is the George Davis Fish Passage and Storm Improvement Project, was reduced slightly in 2023. Our accompanying document to the capital plan is our project and program guide that really provides the intent and details behind each program and project. We had some minor changes in that. We added table of contents and we added a summary of grants for our currently funded stormwater capital projects. We did want to add a note that some projects that have stretched over several years have actually had prior grant funding, but we've already completed those grants reimbursement, so they were not included in that final summary. And just one more time, here's our final capital plan. And that is it. So with that, we're hoping again, council will consider adopting the capital plan. The resolution can be found in Exhibit 1 of your packets. And I also have, I copied the text onto a slide deck if that would be useful for you as well. And I can stop sharing. And if there are any questions in the meantime, happy to answer them.
Great, thank you. Council, I'll open it up either for a motion or for some questions. Or I will make a motion. Okay. I move to adopt Resolution 2022-972, the updated 6-year Stormwater Capital Improvement Plan.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, 7-0. That is good to go. Thank you, Audrey. And please tell us about your stormwater rate study.
Okay. Sorry, just switching presentations here.
No issues. Thank you.
Okay. So again, just we've been running in some parallel paths with both our capital plan, the rate study, and the budget. So here this evening to present our final rate changes to our rate model. Sorry, I guess I should introduce myself again, but I'm Audrey Sarcy, Interim Public Works Director, and Stephanie Sullivan is here to help answer any questions. We just wanted to provide some final changes to this plan this evening. So this followed a similar pathway as our capital plan. Again, all of those pieces are very well integrated throughout this last summer and fall. And we are here this evening to ask Council to consider a motion to adopt the stormwater utility at the enhanced level of service for 2023 and 2024. We've gone through this quite a few times. The capital projects and programs can be found on the right-hand side of your screen. Those are funded through Fund 438. The operational programs are funded through Fund 408 in your budgets. And some additional items for your consideration, or that are included in the enhanced level of service, are the fish barrier assessment. We'll be implementing a pipe condition assessment, and we'll be adding 2 additional FTEs over the next few years to help us deliver all these projects and programs. We've had a few minor changes since we were last presenting the rate model with you a few weeks ago. We went back and reviewed all of our capital projects and programs just to make sure all the numbers were in there correctly. And we reviewed and updated a few escalators within our rate model itself. The results remain the same for our increase to our surface water management fees at 6.25% a year. But the great news is we will not require any debt service. Just wanted to kind of connect the dots on how all of these items were related. Obviously, we've gone through our capital programs and our utility operations. We've determined a level of service. We just adopted the capital plan. And some next steps, we're asking you to adopt formally the level of service for the next 2 years of the utility. And then we'll come back in November with the final rate model report as FCS completes that and ask you to adopt that, along with our 2023 and 24 stormwater budget, and of course the fee schedule to formally set the water management fees for 2023. And with that, we do have a recommended motion for Council to consider this evening.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, so this would be the fees for just the 2 years or for the 6 years?
We're actually just asking Council to adopt the level of service this evening, and then we'll bring back the rate study in November along with the updated fee schedule for 23 and 24. So we're asking Council to adopt the enhanced level of service for 23 and 24 this evening.
Okay, so if we adopt that, what because I feel like you can't do one without kind of knowing what the implications would be on the other. So we would adopt the level of service, which would imply a 6.25% increase for 6 years is what I thought I saw, but we're only really approving the level of service for 2 years. So that's why I want to understand what that.
Right, we're actually, so we'll be bringing back the fee schedule in November for 2023, and the budget, of course, has 2023 and 2024 amounts in there with 6.25 rate increase. So that's the final ask of Council. We'll come back again in 2024 to amend that fee schedule with the 6.25% increase as well. And then, of course, as we move into the next biennial budget cycle in 25 and 26, we could hope to extend that level of service consideration and that rate increase. That rate model would still apply at that time as well.
Okay, and then one other question, and I know this is probably more about the rate schedule, but again, I feel like the two go hand in hand. If we adopt this level of service and that rate schedule, and then we end up getting, hopefully, some big grants that we weren't necessarily anticipating, how do we adjust that rate for our users?
That's a great question. We could work, one option would be to work with our consultants to take another look at our revenue requirements. Should we have a handful of very large grants come in, that would be wonderful. The other option would be to advance some projects a little sooner. So we have several projects or programs built into the capital plan that allow a lot of flexibility. So as long as staff resources allow, we could advance some more retrofits, for example, at a faster rate.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'll go ahead and make a motion to adopt the level of service as presented. Or you can pop the wording back up there and I'll read it more directly.
More than happy to.
Sorry. Okay, great. Thanks. I don't have that page. I move to adopt the enhanced level of service for the storm and surface water utility rate study for 23-24. I further move to direct the city manager to bring the rate study and surface water management fee schedule resolution back to council next month.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, 7-0. That is also good to go. Thank you, Audrey. Are you done this evening?
I believe I am. Thank you very much,
Great.
Mayor and Council.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
All right. So next we will move to new business, resolving outstanding docket items. Who is that? Oh, Kelly in the house. All right.
Me. It's good to see you all. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and the interim city manager. For the record, my name is Kelly Hildy, and I am the Deputy Director of Community Development. Tonight, I'd like to introduce Miriam Leitner, Planning Manager with Community Development, who will be providing an overview of outstanding comprehensive plan and development regulation amendments on the docket, as well as provide a recommended course of action for each outstanding item. And with that, I will hand it over to Miriam. Oh, also David Pyle is joining us tonight as well. Hi, David.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Good evening, City Council. As you know, the city is starting work on several large policy projects, including the 2024 Comprehensive Plan Periodic Update and the Critical Areas Update. These updates present a good opportunity to review the city's list of outstanding docket items and do some docket housekeeping. Before we jump into the outstanding docket items themselves, I thought it might be helpful to quickly talk about the docket process. The city's annual docketing process is guided by Title 24A of the Sammamish Municipal Code. There are two types of docket requests. The first is a text amendment to change the text of the comprehensive plan or the Sammamish Municipal Code development regulations. And the second is a site-specific land use map amendment, or SLUMA for short, which changes the zoning designation for a property or a small group of properties on the city's comprehensive plan future land use map. The docket request form is available for applicants online year-round. We've tried to keep the form fairly simple and quick for applicants to complete, with a more detailed application form required if the request is docketed. The annual deadline for the docket is the first Monday of August at 5 p.m. And at this time, staff pulls all docket request forms submitted since the last annual deadline and starts preparing the requests for legislative review. The Planning Commission reviews the annual docket requests, holds a public hearing, and makes a recommendation to City Council. And then City Council holds a public hearing and approves a resolution that sets the docket. After the docket is set, applicants have 30 days to submit an amendment proposal application. This application helps build a more detailed understanding of the request and also addresses the items that are required by our comprehensive plan when amendments are being considered. The amendment proposal is then added to the work plan, and when ready, is taken to both the Planning Commission and City Council for review and public hearings. If approved, the City Council will sign a resolution, and then the amendment is integrated into the annual ordinance, amending the comprehensive plan, as the GMA limits the adoption of amendments to the comprehensive plan to once a year unless there's an emergency. So with that, let's move on to our outstanding docket items. There are currently 9 outstanding docket items grouped here by the resolution that they were docketed under. I'll be going over each one of these in the following slides, but you can also find more details on each one in Exhibit 1 of your packets. So tonight we're asking Council to decide which items should be formally removed from the docket, which should be kept on the docket, and which should be added to scopes of existing projects. We're going to start our housekeeping tonight with the items that staff are recommending be removed from the docket. We have 2 docket items from 10 years ago, 2012, that the city considers effectively closed, but we're asking that they be formally removed tonight. The first item is the pilot program for up to 5 projects in the R1 zone to look at the possibility of removing the requirement for deducting environmentally critical areas from the density calculation. The item was integrated into the scope of an R1 study, which, if changes to the density calculations were recommended, would have been integrated into the 2015 comprehensive plan and associated development regulations. A note in the project file states that in May of 2014, at the City Council meeting, Council decided not to move forward with the R1 study. And because there were no changes to the R1 density calculations made during the 2015 Comprehensive Plan and Development Regulation update, the city considers this item to be effectively closed. The second docket item from 2012 was a proposal to increase commercial space within the Town Center A3 zone, as well as select adjacent TCB parcels in the Town Center Southeast Quadrant. This item was docketed with the direction that it be evaluated through the Economic Development Strategic Plan process, which would be used as input to the 2015 Comprehensive Plan rewrite process. The city considers this item to be effectively closed because the Economic Development Strategic Plan wasn't added to the work plan in 2014, nor was an economic development element added to the city's 2015 Comprehensive Plan update. The next docket item proposed for removal from the docket is from 2016 and includes updates to the city's transportation element. This included the concurrency project list, the city's traffic impact fees, and updates to reflect the annexation of Klahani and other development. While work started on this item in 2017, it was put on hold to address other transportation policy work directed by Council. One other thing to note about this item is that its content is also incorporated into a later docket request from Public Works that was submitted the following year. So because the content of this request is duplicated, the city's requesting that this older docket item be removed while the other one that's from 2017 stays on the docket. Our final item proposed for removal is the Town Center Quality of Life updates, which were docketed in 2018. This docket item involved extensive outreach to evaluate if updates were needed to the Town Center sub-area plan and potentially the comprehensive plan for specific topics, which included the green spine, the urban forest canopy, public transportation, regional stormwater, solar generation, and public right-of-way design standards. This docket request lacks specific direction, and the broad scope created challenges due to the work plan, budget, and staffing. Staff is recommending formally removing this item so that docket requests can be submitted in the future as the need arises with more specific scopes of work that better align with staff, work plan, and budget capacity. Okay, so moving on to items recommended for integration into either the 2024 comprehensive plan or the 2024 comprehensive plan update or the 2023-24 critical area update. All of these docket items remain on the docket because of leadership changes and limited staff and work plan capacity. While capacity remains limited, these items could be integrated into existing project scopes, supported by funding requested as part of the 23-24 budget if that funding gets approved. The first item is a site-specific land use map amendment, or SLUMA for short, which was docketed in 2017. The request is to change the zoning designation on the future land use map for a 2-parcel, 2.2-acre site known as the Recreation Center, which is currently leased to and operated by the Boys and Girls Club. The proposal is to change the zoning designation on the future land use map from R12 and R18 to Community Business, or CB. This change would allow for continued use of the property as a recreation facility, while also potentially allowing for a range of other retail development to complement the Englewood Community Business Zone in which the property sits. This SLUMA could be evaluated during the broader updates to the land use element, which will include the future land use map. Another item recommended for integration into the 2024 comp plan update is to explore modifications to the Transfer of Development Rights, or TDR, program through the review of the development regulations and the interlocal agreement with King County. This would look at ways to allow the TDR program to be used more widely, especially in areas dealing with landslides and other geohazards, and addressing constraints impacting the TDR program as defined in the interlocal agreement. There are two other items that were docketed in 2020 that staff recommends be added to the scope of the 2023-24 critical area update. The first item is to apply the native growth protection easement, which is currently done for subdivisions, to single-family residences on existing lots for wetlands, wetland boundaries, and tree retention areas. Additionally, this item would explore putting permanent limits on the disturbance of or addition to impervious surface in steep slope and geological hazard areas without requiring additional permitting and review. The second item involves placing permanent limits on original permits regarding tree retention, as well as limits on development in critical areas, and having these limitations be recorded as is done with new subdivisions. Staff believe that both of these items align well with the scope of the critical areas update and could be studied as part of that work. And finally, we have one docket item that we mentioned previously, which is the 2017 docket request from Public Works. And while it wasn't clear in the agenda packet, this item from 2017 does include all of the items from 2016, with the addition of updates to the 20-year capital improvement projects. So again, because there's redundancy between the two requests, we're recommending that the later request from 2017 be kept and the 2016 one be removed. This item is recommended to stay on the docket because Public Works is planning to take traffic impact fees to City Council in the spring of 23. And the other components of this request will be updated through the 2024 periodic update process. So Exhibit 2 of your agenda packet includes a draft resolution that aligns with the recommendations that I've just gone over. The resolution included in Exhibit 2 is a draft, and it can be modified as needed based on Council's discussion and decisions here tonight. So with that, I will hand it back to the mayor, and I'm also happy to answer questions or put up the list of the docket items for discussion. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Council, I will open it up to you. Okay, now I have three. Councilmember O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just had just one or two questions because I have a fair understanding of the docket process. There's two items that we're looking to remove, and I think I'm identifying them there, R2018-811 and R2012-519. They both pertain to the town centre. And I would just like more information around it, like why are we taking this off the docket? Is it usual for us to go back to the docket and clear things out? Is that kind of a usual process? But I would like kind of more information about these two particular things, because I would just like to see how this affects the town centre plan. Why are we removing it? So I just feel in order for me to make a proper decision to support the removal of something, I need to fully understand what I'm removing.
Absolutely. Kelly is our town center expert, so I'm hoping she might take a first stab.
Sure. And I guess to answer your first question, is it typical? Do we remove items from the docket? No, it hasn't been a process we've facilitated in the past, but that's also created problems where we have a docket with items going back 10 years and they haven't been formally removed, and it causes confusion. And so this is an opportunity for us to do a little housekeeping and be very clear on what needs to stay on the docket and what needs to be removed, as well as those items that are going to be repurposed under another project's scope of work. So we do want to make this a routine process moving forward, especially as it aligns with our comprehensive plan updates every 10 years. Hope we don't have docket items that are on our list that are 10 years or older. But this is just something that needed to be done so that we can make sure we're very clear on what council expects us to be working on and that we're moving forward with our budget and work plan requests. So now to Town Center. So as Miriam mentioned with Resolution 2012-519, that is the item related to economic development. This is just a formality. This work was considered as part of the resolution, and it was vetted through the comprehensive plan update process. Because that work wasn't included, it was the economic development strategic plan did not move forward. In theory, we really don't have a way to restart this. And again, because of the age of it, we may want to, encourage the applicant to resubmit their docket. Also, going through the comprehensive plan update for 2024, council did direct us to include an economic development chapter in our comprehensive plan, and so I think that conversation would be appropriate at that point. So there are some options there, but for this particular resolution, I think it's outdated. That work wasn't completed as originally planned, and so just to again, be very clear on what we are doing and not doing, I think it is appropriate to remove that item. Excuse me. For Resolution 2018-811. So this was a really broad docket item that was brought forward in 2018, and it covered everything from urban forestry to street standards. And that is a big list of things to take on. And so we've tried to start this project over the years. 2020 was the last check-in with City Council. We received no direction on that. Again, just trying to get specific direction on these items has been a challenge. With that said, with the 24 comprehensive plan update, we are doing some major planning efforts. We're doing a climate action plan. We are doing a housing action plan. We're taking on an economic development chapter. And so I think it makes sense to do that strategic work first and then come back and revisit Town Center and make changes that are appropriate and that are applicable to this upcoming and recent long-range planning effort. So staff recommends removing it from the docket, reevaluating it, and there are maybe some things we take care of under the comprehensive plan update. And for those that we don't take care of, we can revisit that and put another docket application together and address that in 25.
And so if we were to leave those two items or either one of those items on the docket, what's the repercussion of that? It is really undefined scope of work, so we would need really clear direction on what that would be. So it'd just be more work for staff to, really clarify that and moving that forward. And have we gone back to the authors of these dockets and told them that this is what we're planning to do and given them an opportunity to respond?
So one of the authors actually gave public comment. That would be Mr. Paul Stickney. Mm-hmm. We have communicated to him in the past, I want to say starting in 2018, reminding him that that is no longer a docket item and that he is more than welcome to resubmit his application for consideration by City Council. He has not done that. So that's where that one stands. I am the author of the Town Center Quality of Life docket, so I've informed myself of the decision to recommend that we take it off the docket. No, I'm kidding. As staff, we all agree that would be the recommended approach, but of course, we'd look to City Council to provide direction as you see fit.
Okay, all right, thank you, Kelly. David.
David.
Yeah, thank you. I also wanted to add on to what Kelly elegantly said, that we really don't want to be in the practice of having a rolling standing list of docket items that we didn't take on. It's poor practice, and we really want to be deliberate about adding things by way of docket to our work plan that we could actually achieve as a city collectively. So going forward, we want to be very clear about what is added and whether or not, there are questions around whether we have the capacity to. Well, I think another one we want to think about is it reasonable to think that we will get this done within the next couple of years? As we don't want to have these things sitting on our docket, 10 years down the line, because many things change. Since some of these were submitted, there are many things that are different in the city than they were at the time that they were authored and submitted by the applicant.
Councilmember Treen.
Miriam, when you reference the future land maps, Miriam, when you reference the future land use maps, what did you mean by that?
So in the comprehensive plan, under the land use element, there is a future land use map that shows the zoning designation for the long-term planning of that parcel. For Sammamish, that aligns almost completely with our current zoning map, but in most other cities, the future land use map tends to be a little bit more broad to allow more flexibility. And so I think that's something we'll be looking at for this update, if that makes sense for the city to consider.
So your reference to that was that the possibility, if policy was made by the council, we would be creating, in a sense, two maps that do have different purposes in regards to zoning. Okay, thanks. And then the last one, and this is just kind of maybe the answer was in there, I just didn't see it, was, are all docketed items to upzone R1 properties closed or would be closed if we pass this resolution?
From everything that we've found in our files, the R1 density pilot never occurred. The code updates through the 2015 update don't reflect any changes to the density calculation. So I don't think that removing this from the docket would have any impact with our current operations.
Appreciate that. Thanks for the clarification.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, thank you. The 2019 857, the modifying of the transfer development rights program. I swore we had a discussion about that earlier, and I felt like that was going to move forward ahead of the comp plan update. So is that a change in that plan, or did I just imagine that because that's what I willed it to be?
We actually brought the Transfer Development Right Program to City Council on July 12th, and we presented, our opportunities and challenges with that program. What we recommended, what City Council gave us the head nod to do, was to include that work as part of the comprehensive plan update. At the same time, also taking a look at the interlocal agreement with King County. So that work, it's also in your budget, preliminary budget that I believe was sent out today to do that work for your consideration as directed at the July 12th meeting. So yes, that work is happening under the comp plan. Running parallel is the interlocal agreement update with King County.
Okay, so it isn't totally just being rolled into the comp plan update. There is work that's going to happen potentially ahead of that with the ILA.
Yes.
And so if I understand that correctly, if we were to modify the ILA, that would in effect modify the TDR program.
Yes.
So that would still be happening potentially ahead of the comp plan update?
Yes.
Okay, then I like that answer. I'm good with all of those answers. I want to make sure, though, that if that's what's really happening, that if we were to include this in this resolution, that doesn't imply or overtly state that we're actually telling you to stop doing that work, because I don't want us to do that.
No, we are doing that work. We have proposed it for the 23-24 work program. And I think that's what is addressed in the agenda bill, correct, Miriam?
For this particular item in the agenda bill, it just says to put it as part of the comp plan.
Okay, so yeah. So it falls under that. It's happening at the same time we're doing the vetting the comprehensive plan. But some of that work could happen ahead of time. So I don't think by removing it from the docket, it's going to cause any issue there.
What if we left this one open just in case you came back with some nugget of a wonderful thing in the ILA discussions by having it there? Would that give us the opportunity to potentially implement that earlier if we wanted to?
David, do you have thoughts on that?
So my understanding is that what we're trying to do is to start conversations with King County regarding the ILA, analyze the ILA and how it can best serve us for what we're trying to achieve, while we're also ramping up the comp plan and working through policy language in the comp plan, and while we're also looking at our codes and identifying what changes in our codes might need to also be made. And in the end, we'll end up with a comprehensive plan and a set of development regulations and an ILA that that promote the use of transfer of development rights as a tool in the city. Absent looking at that cohesively, it'd be difficult for us, given the staffing that we have and given the bandwidth that we have, to take on an independent ILA program sometime in 23 or early 24 while we're in the midst of the comprehensive plan update. The comprehensive plan update is all hands on deck. It's a huge process for us. And we're really trying to keep these things in the proper sequence so that we're not disrupted by another process that might be a little premature in the timing. I do understand the desire and the need to get this online and to try to broaden the program beyond where it currently stands. We're very much looking forward to that for many reasons. However, we feel it's best to keep them in alignment so that the final work product is ultimately the bundle of the comprehensive plan, the development regulations, and the amended ILA.
So if I translate that, David, you're saying that even if we wanted to, we couldn't get an update to the TDR program ahead of the comp plan update? Is that kind of what I heard you say? Or could we get an update to the TDR program ahead of the comp plan update?
I'll say that given the number of public meetings that we have and the number of topics that we have to bring forward to public meetings, we also don't have the legislative bandwidth to get to it. Okay. It is possible that we could come up with a surgical change to the code and pass simultaneously an amended ILA with King County sometime in late 23 that would enable us to begin using a widened or broadened TDR program in the city. That is a possibility. So I think I'm understanding what you're saying is to not take it off the docket out of caution that if there was something that we wanted to do that we discovered in working with King County, that we could still do that work sometime in 23.
That is, and I would describe it more as excessive optimism, that I would like to keep that one open just in case. I don't know how you feel about that. Would that offend you? Would that offend your sensibilities, David?
Well, I wouldn't be offended either way. I'm I'm more concerned about retaining staff and having a sustainable workload for people that it can get through in the time that we have available with the legislative agenda that we have. The more we talk about all the things we want to do, the more I see all the council meetings and planning commission meetings fill up, and the less time we have available to work on things like the comprehensive plan.
If I could add, and I think keeping on the docket would make sense as well. When we talk about the comp plan, I think we're talking really broadly. It also includes, like I've mentioned before, the TDR, or sorry, the housing action plan, the critical areas update, and these things potentially can have some influence on the TDR program. And so those are happening also in alignment with the comp plan update. And so to keep it on the docket, I think would make sense so that we have it covered, knowing that a lot of work is happening over the next 2 years in different topic areas that could influence what that TDR program looks like in the end. So
All right.
I think that's a good suggestion.
Excellent. Thank you.
Did you want to make that motion? Would that be
Want
okay
me
to do
to? No,
that?
I think we're gonna do-
minus.
Well, I want
that,
to make
or
sure
do we
everybody
just
has
need
their
to-
questions answered before
Oh, I don't
we-
have any more questions, unless anyone else has questions.
I could do that.
Oh, wait.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I just had like a general question, and I think many of the items, especially those are recommended for removal, they have a lot of history behind that. I think previous councils have made certain decisions. I think for some of them, I'm still not. I don't have any insight into that, and I don't think the packet had that much information. So I think my question is just that will that help us with understanding why are we removing certain things? Absolutely. Or do we want to still keep some of the items, especially that are recommended for removal, on the docket open for future consideration? So I think that's my only concern, like a general umbrella concern with some of the items that we've had.
All right. I don't see any other hands or buttons. Councilmember Stewart?
All right. Since the mayor asked, I think I can make a motion. And just because we don't want to be here for another hour and a half, I'm not going to read well, I guess it's not that bad. I'm trying to see if there's I think I would like to propose that we pass. Do you have the number, Mayor? Resolution 2022-973 with the one amendment, which would be to leave docket item 2019-857 open and not remove that.
Second. All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
All right, 6-1. I think, good? Okay, great. Thank you. Next is the approval for the consultant services for our Notch property.
Good evening again, Madam Mayor, City Council, Mr. City Manager. I'm Anjali Maya, Director of Parks, Recreation and Facilities. Your next topic is a request to authorize a consultant contract for the Notch property, which is a name that has become associated with a city-owned parcel that is a part of Lower Sammamish Commons Park. This parcel will be the southern tip of the future green spine shown in the town center plan. We've worked on and off on this planning effort for a few years now. In 2018, the city worked with a consultant to come up with a user guide and a design manual for the green spine. And over the last few years, the developer has explored different options for the adjacent parcels, ranging from shops and restaurants to housing. One version showed a sloped parcel east of the Notch property slated for future development. So now that there is a little more clarity on the adjacent uses, it is prudent for the city to begin early planning for this Notch property to set parameters for development and to preserve the city's interest in developing these parcels in the future. I'm joined tonight by Kevin Teague, our Deputy Director, and Michelle Arab, Parks Project Manager. I'll turn it over to Michelle for the presentation.
Great, thank you, Anjali, and good evening, everyone. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members, and City Manager. I am going to share my screen. I hope you all can see that.
Michelle, do you want to try changing to the presentation mode?
Oh, you know,
it sometimes shows it the reverse on your screen, but I don't know about council. I'm seeing it.
Can you see it now in presentation mode?
Yeah.
Okay, great. We will briefly review the project background, RFQ process and firm selection, look at the preliminary project cost and funding, anticipated timeline and next steps, and seek input, questions, and direction. Tonight, we are seeking approval for City Council to authorize the City Manager to execute a contract with MXM Landscape Architecture for design services for the concept design of the Notch property. We'll begin by reviewing the project context and background. To help orient you, here's an aerial photo showing the location of the Notch property in red. It is located within the city's core, south of Southeast 4th Street, and extending north from Sammamish Commons, which is outlined in red. The Notch property is approximately 180 feet wide by 318 feet long, roughly comparable in size to the Upper Commons Plaza. However, unlike the Upper Commons Plaza, there is an 11-foot grade change from north to south of the site. While the Notch property is City of Sammamish parkland, it falls within a different zoning area than the Commons. The 1.37 acre site is a part of the TCD zone, or Civic Center of the Town Center sub-area. Surrounding the Notch to the northwest and east, as shown in blue, is the TCA1 zone, or core mixed-use area. To the south is Sammamish Commons in the TCD zone, or Civic Center. The Notch's zoning and guidelines developed in the Town Center Infrastructure Plan will be important factors to consider while developing the concept designs for the Notch property, and we will review that more later in the presentation. As well, Kelly Hildy, Deputy Director of Community Development, is with us if you have specific questions at the end of the presentation about the zoning and town center development. I suspect most of you, if not all, have seen the site, although it may not have stood out. It's a site with lots of potential. Here you can see how the Notch property blends into the town center core mixed-use area. This is a view looking from the Notch property toward both Lower Sammamish Commons and the town center core mixed-use area. And in this last photo, you see Lower Sammamish Commons directly south of the Notch property. This will be an important connection to consider in the future. In this older rendering from the developer, the approximate location of the Notch property is outlined in red. What isn't shown in this rendering is that there will be development to the right and left of the Notch property. However, I think seeing the site from this bird's eye view really captures the potential of the site as it relates to the new development and Sammamish Commons. Because the developers are moving forward with their plans, We feel it's the right time to start envisioning what the Notch will be and its role as a civic space for the city. Though the Notch property sits outside of the core mixed-use area, the site is identified as a part of the Green Spine, which was first envisioned in the Sammamish Town Center Plan adopted in 2008, and then was further refined with the adoption of the Town Center Infrastructure Plan in 2010. These two documents guide the development of the Notch property as it relates to the Green Spine. As described within the Town Center Infrastructure Plan, the Green Spine is a central component of the core mixed-use area. This linear public open space, shown conceptually in this plan, follows a general north-south alignment and is composed of a hierarchy of spaces categorized into 3 zones: primary, secondary, and neighborhood transition. While each zone provides a unique pedestrian experience, all are stitched together by a common thread to create a seamless public amenity and a great public space for town center activities. Each zone has a list of characteristics that were developed within the Town Center Infrastructure Plan. The Notch site is identified as a secondary zone of the Green Spine. The secondary zone should have a linear park-like character with areas that welcome a range of community activities and programming. Design elements could include small pocket plazas for quiet gatherings, open lawn areas for unstructured play, and pathways meandering around green infrastructure such as rain gardens and constructed wetlands to accommodate on-site stormwater. Because the Town Center Infrastructure Plan guides development within the core mixed-use area, including this site, the Notch property will start with concept design instead of the typical master plan process. This means that instead of seeking input regarding hopes, dreams, and concerns in the initial phases, concept design will build upon the work already done in the infrastructure plan. Once concepts have been developed to meet the infrastructure plan guidelines, the project will move forward by engaging with the public and stakeholders, Park and Recreation Commission, City Council, and city staff to develop a plan for a civic space that is both a destination and a link between the Commons and the Town Center. In June this year, a request for qualifications, or RFQ, was published for consultant services to complete the concept design for the Notch property. A total of 5 firms responded, and 3 firms were invited to interview this past August. The panel consisted of staff from Parks, Recreation and Facilities, and Community Development. Based on the quality of previous planning and design work with projects of a similar nature, and the experience and qualifications of their staff, MXM Landscape Architecture was unanimously selected for the project. MXM is based in Seattle with great experience designing civic spaces and community engagement. They will bring understanding and enthusiasm to this project, and we look forward to working with them. The total budget for the concept design contract is $100,000, which includes the survey, critical areas reconnaissance report, design, and additional services fees. There are adequate funds within the park CIP to pay for this work. And finally, let's review next steps and the anticipated timeline. A 9 to 12-month effort is anticipated for the concept design process, which will consist of 4 phases. Phase 1 is site investigation and analysis, where MXM will review documents such as the Sammamish Town Center Infrastructure Plan and develop graphics summarizing site opportunities and constraints and a report of their site analysis. During phase 2, MXM will develop a preliminary park design program detailing proposed uses, design character, and criteria with input from city staff, the Parks and Recreation Committee, and a public online survey. During the third phase of concept design, MXM will prepare and present 3 design concept options based upon the approved design program with rough order of magnitude cost estimates for each option. The process will result in a final preferred concept design option that will be included in the concept design report. This phase will also include public involvement with participation from the community at large, city staff, Parks and Recreation Commission, City Council, and community stakeholders. And during the final phase, the final preferred concept design option will be presented to Council for adoption. And with that, we welcome your input and questions.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Councilmember Howe?
Thank you for the presentation. It was very valuable. I did have a question because Anjali mentioned it just in her opening salvo about that this property had been considered for housing. If I heard you. No.
No. So this property is going to have town center development on the east and the west.
Right, right.
And those parcels have been considered for different use.
Okay, so maybe I must have misunderstood you because I thought that when you were talking about Notch, it had been considered that multiple iterations of concepts had kind of flown through. And that,
no,
okay.
Yeah,
so it was
for the
always
adjacent.
been just part of the green spine,
Correct.
always. Okay, so thank you. The other question I have has to do with how has it gone working with the town center development team in terms of integrating the idea of this lovely concept with what they're working on?
So over the years, working with the adjacent developer, the question that's come up quite a bit is, well, what is the city planning on doing? And the only thing we could point to was the infrastructure plan. That's the adopted plan for the green spine and for the A1 zone, or what we call the core mixed use area. Any other level of specificity would have to come through a public process or a concept led by the city to finalize or to review that programming, those design elements. And so I think that's been a challenge for adjacent development because it doesn't give a clear picture on what the notch will be. And so this is our opportunity to provide that clearer picture through the public process and through this concept design. So this has been some time coming. This is exciting to see this work move forward. It helps me as your deputy director working with these developers to say, hey, the city does have a plan moving forward, and here's the schedule and so forth. As for adjacent development, it will be mixed use, so it will be a mix of retail and residential. Those concepts, I believe, are currently under development by the developer, and we hope to see maybe a UZDP later in 23, maybe 24. So I think that's still being vetted, but we've had conversations, and obviously the developers would be a stakeholder in this process, so they will be consulted, and those conversations will happen.
So the idea is to basically kind of slot it in sort of like this. Is there any exposure to the city from the standpoint that we have a plan? Can it impinge on their plans? Like, could we be at risk of starting an issue because, we didn't complete something on time? Or do we think that our communication is so strong and our partnership such that we're able to manage through that and predict when those touch points or rub points might happen?
Anjali or Michelle, do you want to answer that, and then I can fill in?
Sure, I can take a stab, and then Michelle or Kevin, you can add to it as well. I think we're doing this in good faith. my standard line has been a chicken and egg, who goes first? And the point of this is there are great differences. So the developer, without knowing what is intended for this space, can end up with, say, a 6-foot retaining wall against this space. But we do want the spaces to blend in. And there is some clear direction in the town center plan and the infrastructure plan as to what this notch property could be put to use for, the secondary zone. So again, it's actually to help the developer and give them a little more guidance on what they can anticipate to see in this space. In terms of timeline, I think this is a very high level concept. So we should be able to complete this in a reasonable amount of time. I don't have major concerns, but I will let Michelle or Kevin add to that.
I think you said it well, Anjali, but the timing for our involvement with bringing in a planning effort for the Notch property now is the most appropriate time as the developer is working on their plans, and we certainly have every intention of working closely with them. As Anjali mentioned, there are grade issues, and we want to make sure that everything works seamlessly. And so we feel like the timing is good right now, and that there are good opportunities for coordination with the developer.
I will add as well, right now on the site is an existing maintenance yard. And so having some reassurance that there's a plan moving forward with an open space and going through that process, that's actually very beneficial to the developer, knowing that the city is being active in studying this and coming up with a design through that public process, because there was some uncertainty without having something on the in that line of work moving forward. And Anjali did touch on this, and I want to reiterate, development adjacent to the green spine has some very specific design standards. It has to be ADA accessible, so there needs to have that transition. It needs to meet CPTED guidelines, crime prevention through environmental design. It has to have active pedestrian frontage on those buildings, so retail, work-live units, senior facilities, whatever that shall be, it needs to be active. And it needs to work with the open space. So it doesn't look like this is public space, this is private space. Like they just need to be coordinated and integrated together. And I think that's where that collaboration with the developer and having them as a stakeholder is really important to ensure that we get that.
Well, thank you. And hopefully the developer is appreciative of the asset that we're providing in terms of a much more attractive space.
Deputy Mayor Lamb?
So the town center infrastructure plan was done in 2010. It's like 13 years ago. So, and it's going to guide this Notch property. How do we reconcile working on a plan that was done 13 years ago? Because going through the infrastructure plan, it doesn't mention like sustainable materials, or transit or anything like that, looking at it through a 2022 lens. And so I'm not quite sure when they're designing how they're going to address working off a very old plan. And this kind of goes forward as well, you know, as other developers are also going to reference this. How do we make, where does that happen? Like where does looking at it, you know, through a current lens happen? And do we adjust the infrastructure plan?
Sure. You know, it being public development or private development, you know, the infrastructure plan sets a baseline. It sets the guidance. The design details are things that can be vetted, you know, through code requirements or a public process, which the Parks Department is proposing going forward with this consultant team. as I mentioned in the last presentation about town center goals and policy review, I think that is naturally going to happen as we work through a housing action plan, a climate action plan, and economic development plan. I anticipate we will have changes to our town center code, probably to our plan, and that includes the infrastructure plan. The infrastructure plan was adopted at the same time the code was adopted. It came as a package deal. And so, yeah, we are 11 years since that work has been done. And getting us through the comp plan update and those sub-plans is going to be really important so that we can take a look at how that impacts future amendments to our policies and our regulations. So, yeah, if I had a crystal ball, I would say that's something we will see in our future as a result of that planning work. So, but right now it is a good baseline. We have some very strong design standards in our current code. They always can be refined. They can always be reviewed, but that infrastructure does set a good baseline, and it gets us moving forward. Knowing we could potentially have amendments to it here following the comp plan update process.
Awesome, thank you.
Councilmember Treen?
Yeah, so infrastructure, stormwater doesn't vet, so all of the improvements that we've been doing on the stormwater regulations would be enacted on any new development throughout the city, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, thanks. Second would be the green spine seems to be controversial based on the information that we received earlier, I don't know, 2020 maybe even. Green sign seems to be a controversial thing as to what it should be or what it was supposed to be. And then so the question is, would this project of the notch with a design, because I want to support it, but I'm really having trouble with it. But would it, if we did move forward and approve the money and did the design, would it set precedent in the town center for what, like, how about let's have a developer come in and do something that maybe is just better than what the regular Anywhere USA development is? So the idea that I'm thinking is if we were to spend this money, do the design, show them this is what really the green spine's supposed to look like, this is how it's supposed to function, here's its infrastructure, here's the aesthetics, here's how people move in it, that's what the green spine should look like all the way through the project. Wouldn't that be nice? Because I think that was the envision of the residents when they approved the town center design. So is that what this is trying to do? Could it do it?
Yeah, I think our first take, this would be the first, the concept, if it moves through the design process and into construction, would be the first piece of the green spine being built. So it does set a stake in the ground. And what we would do through development review of the green spine moving forward, because that's all privately owned land built by the developers, one, they do need to meet the standards in the code. The guidelines, the planning and design guidelines of the infrastructure plan, and we would ask that it is a cohesive design and taking reference from what the city has designed as part of its Notch property, and in that cohesive design moving all the way through the green spine, which is something that is discussed in the infrastructure plan. So it's the city, setting the groundwork for that, but we really do want to work with the development community and see that that development review process be something where we can have that conversation to ensure cohesiveness, and I'm confident we can have that for sure. So.
I'm not, that's all. That's upsetting a little bit. Thanks.
Councilmember O'Farrell, I hope you were making a motion to extend our meeting.
Oh. I make a motion to extend our meeting.
Yeah.
To 10:15, 10:30?
Gotta pick one.
10:20?
We can always end early.
Okay, 10:20.
Second.
All right. Sorry.
Second.
No, there has been a second. I just forgot what to say. Yeah, sorry. All those in favor, or is there any discussion? It's been moved and seconded for 10:20. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, 7-0, 10:20. Please, Councilmember O'Farrell.
Gosh, making a motion around here is you take your life into your own hands. Wow, you get so many people telling you what to do and what to say. Wow. Anyway, I just wanted to comment that I am in favor of the green spine and moving forward with the notch. I take on board what Councilmember Treen said, and I think that those are valid points about, ensuring what it's going to look like going forward. I do think it's, if I remember the town centre plan, and many times I've kind of read large, I won't say I've read it entirely, but large sections of it, and it does kind of note that the green spine is to reflect each corridor as it goes through. And we will see how that all transpires over the years. But one thing that I have learned over the last 3 years is that we need more impromptu spaces to gather and more impromptu places to meet our neighbours and to meet people in Sammamish that we don't know, and to meet people. And this is what I think of when I think of the green spine. I think of those kinds of opportunities, and that we need to give our residents more opportunity to meet each other, and not just as we're dashing in and out of the store, and maybe we don't go to the park, but maybe we'd spend time at the town centre. So I can't wait for this to begin. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that the City Council authorize the city manager to execute a contract with XMN Landscape Architecture for design services for the concept design of the Notch property.
Second.
Okay, I would love to speak to my motion, which is that I'm excited to see the city actually taking steps to get started on our piece of the work for the town center. I think this is an excellent opportunity, and I know we are in great hands with both Kelly and Anjali and all of our staff to put together some really amazing concepts. And building on Councilmember O'Farrell's comments, this is a great opportunity for us to create these spaces. I will say that during the pandemic, there have been times when I've been a little bit jealous of some of our neighboring cities where they have parkland integrated in some of their retail areas, like a town center, like in Kirkland and in Redmond, where you could go get food or ice cream and then go sit in a park where people were able to be out and about safely. And so I'm really looking forward to us having such spaces and to give our teens and our tweens places to hang out that isn't on a parking lot of a grocery store. So I am super excited to see this get moving, and I appreciate all the work you guys are doing in leading the way. Thank you.
All right, if we remember back to the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
You can't, unless you have a conflict of interest. It's against the council rules.
That is
so
correct in
I
our
do need to
council
vote.
rules that you cannot abstain unless you have a conflict of interest.
I have a conflict of interest.
State your conflict.
It's my heart. It hurts my heart.
The mayor is the presiding officer of the meeting, so you need to rule on whether or not you accept that reason for abstention here.
Yeah, Councilmember Treen, I would really like you to vote and not abstain.
Nay.
All right.
Difficulty.
6-1 for our city manager to, sorry, I don't even remember the motion. But we are 6-1, and I think you have captured what the motion was. Yeah. Thank you so much, Lita. Next, we have item number 17, the Sammamish Community and Aquatic Center.
Yes.
Natatorium.
That's right. And I have that as well, Council. So for the record, I'm Anjali Maya with Parks, Recreation and Facilities. And we have for your consideration a design contract for the tile replacement project in the natatorium at the Sammamish Community and Aquatic Center. And natatorium is a fancy word for a room that houses an indoor pool, pool deck, change rooms, etc. I would like to point out that under the city's operating agreement with the YMCA, the YMCA is responsible for all maintenance of the building. But in this case, the tile work has been defective from when the facility was constructed, and so the city is taking responsibility to set it right. There will be an impact on operations, and we are working closely with our partners so that users will be informed well ahead of the work. I'm going to hand this off to Kevin Teague, our Deputy Director, to introduce the team and make the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Anjali. And thank you, Madam Mayor and Madam Deputy Mayor and City Council and Interim City Manager. As Anjali mentioned, my name is Kevin Teague. I'm the Deputy Director for Parks, Recreation, and Facilities. Tonight, we will be giving you an update on the tile replacement project at the Sammamish Community and Aquatic Center, or YMCA. With me tonight is our Senior Project Manager, Sevda Baran. Also, we have with us tonight Nate Smith, the Executive Director of the YMCA, as well as our consultant, Jeffrey Wandezewicz, with ARC Architects. Along with an update of the design development and cost estimate for this project, we will also be asking Council to authorize a design contract with ARC Architects. The Sammamish Community and Aquatic Center was constructed in 2016, and deficiencies were discovered in the tile during the warranty period of construction, following construction. In 2018, the tile assembly was investigated and construction deficiencies were found due to expansion joints that were omitted. In 2020, the city filed a lawsuit, and in 2022, the city received a settlement for $500,000. Also in 2022, ARC Architects were hired to analyze the failure and recommend replacement options. As part of ARC's analysis, they determined a construction sequence to minimize the impact on the YMCA's schedule. That being said, they estimate the total repair will take up to 6 months to complete. The work will be done in 2 phases, allowing one of the pools to stay open at all times. Phase 1 will work on the lap pool and the changing rooms, and then phase 2 will cover the leisure pool, showers, and restroom. And each phase will take approximately 3 months to complete. Between the design team, city staff, and the YMCA, it was determined that replacing the failed tile with new, properly installed tile was the best repair option. It keeps a consistent aesthetic in the facility. It has an easier long-term maintenance, and it works best with the existing sub-base thickness, particularly as that relates to the floor drains. Additionally, tile is preferred by the YMCA. The current cost estimate for the replacement is $840,000, which is inclusive of soft costs, design fees, and sales tax. Our consultant team also explored other repair options. They looked at epoxy urethane systems, a concrete material solution as well. And because there wasn't a vast price difference, and for the reasons previously mentioned, it was decided to pursue replacing the tile with new tile. As to the timeline for this project, you can see that we are here tonight with the design contract, having completed the analysis of the problem and the potential solutions. Our next step is to move into a design and permitting phase, and to enter into a contract with ARC Architects to prepare bid and construction documents. We will then put up the project for bid in the spring, summer, and hope to begin construction in early September once school is back in session. This is the preference of the YMCA and what works best with their programming. So next steps for this project are first to have council authorize the design contract. And then, as I mentioned, in the spring, summer of 2023, we will come back to council and request authorization for a construction contract. So we have prepared a suggested motion should council decide to authorize this contract tonight. And with that, does council have any questions for the project team or for the YMCA? We're happy to take those. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Councilmember Stewart?
Yes, I move that we authorize the city manager to execute a contract with ARC Architects for design services required for the replacement of the tile work at the Sammamish Community and Aquatic Center. Yeah, and just speaking to my motion, I just want to give a big shout out to our staff, especially Sevda. This is a long time in coming. There's been a lot of work on this, and I know that there was a lot of effort in getting the company that installed this to make the repairs, and a lot of complications there. We won't go into all the details, but I just really appreciate the stamina that you guys have had on this, and the great work you do with the YMCA and reviewing the facility and keeping up on the maintenance. So really appreciate that. And I do want to take a moment, if I can, to give a special shout out to the YMCA and thank you for the support you've given to our community during COVID. I know it wasn't easy running facilities like that and doing what you had to do to support not only our community, but all of our surrounding communities. So thank you.
Councilmember Napure? Oh, no, it's okay.
For the second, no.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All those in favor to the
Authorize
SCAC agreement, say aye. 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 Opposed? All right, 7-0, that one passes. All right, that is the end of the regular agenda, or regular items. We're down to council reports. Deputy Mayor Lamb.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Council.
So I went to a public issues committee meeting last week, and I have follow-up in my written report. And I attended a second meeting for the K4C elected official work session. Councilmember Stewart and O'Farrell also attended, and the meeting basically unveiled a tool that King County has developed in partnership with K4C, which is the King County Climate Collaborative. And King County recently completed their measurements of greenhouse gases in central Puget Sound, and they're offering this really great tool for all the King County cities to actually see within their area what their greenhouse gases actually are. And what's really cool about this interactive tool is that you can see what sort of policies, local, federal, and state policies have effect on greenhouse gases. So somebody in Sammamish could actually use this tool and see where our greenhouse gases are and see how, as a city, how we close the gap between some of these policies and what we can do locally. I don't know if you have anything to say, Councilmember Stewart or Farrell?
No, I don't have anything to add. You said that very succinctly and completely. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
I guess the only thing I'd add, right, is that King County also offered to come to the city and give a demo and take us through the tools that they have, as well as some of the data, if we when and if we are ready to do so. So that was super exciting because there's a lot of data that they have and a lot of toolkits that they've provided for that. So it's awesome. Thanks.
And I think we'll be utilizing this a lot as we move forward on our own climate action plan.
Great, thank you. I did not have a written report, but this morning I did meet with Congresswoman Schreier here, so thank you to Scott and Debbie for setting that up. Her priorities really align well with our council goals, so we kind of talked about what we did at the council goal setting, basically ways we can kind of work together, and her pretty much grant specialist for municipalities was there as well. So discussing, where do we see us in the future, getting more money for more fun things. And we also discussed opportunities, which I'll follow up with you, Scott, on bringing her to some sort of something, having an event and having her come with us and be on a panel. She's super excited to partner with us. So it's a really good meeting and will not be the last. So, and then I think you have a city manager report.
I do, Mayor. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good evening, Scott McCall, Interim City Manager. Council, tonight I wanted to share out that my city manager report relates to a complaint we had received here at the city regarding the potential deletion of public records. We received last month 2 separate emails from citizens noting a text identified from a recent public records request disbursement. The text was from August 2020 from the former city manager to council members instructing them to delete public records, potentially delete public records. In addition, a former council member also produced a similar text from the former city manager as part of that response to a public records request. So there were 2 separate items. The email from the citizens noted the state law notes that deletion of public records is against the law. Further, the complaints note that failure to report the potential deletion of public records is also against the law. Therefore, the city, once we were notified, and me specifically, we take these concerns very seriously. So much so that council already identified previously this year in August that trust and transparency was a goal of the council, and by definition then a goal for the city. In response to those complaints, the city has responded in the following ways. We have referred the issue to law enforcement and the investigation remains pending. We also identified a gap in our last updated 2018 employee handbook regarding the use of personal accounts, and therefore brought legislation this evening to amend our employee handbook to reflect current practice and to provide clarity regarding compliance with the Public Records Act. In addition, the clerk's office is incorporating this information into their upcoming all-staff training, and Human Resources will be following up with all employees to sign an acknowledgement statement that they have received the updated handbook and they understand the change. Additionally, our Human Resources team is including this information in all of our new onboarding processes for new employees as they come on board. As I stated earlier tonight, Council approved during consent a resolution updating the employee handbook, as the employee handbook has to be approved by resolution by Council, and that is the document that provides all the parameters around which we operate here if we are on city staff. So with that, I would say that completes my report on that particular issue, and I think that's the complete list for the moment. I do have one more item, Mayor, if there's, I want to just give council a preview that we are coming up towards the end of the year. And generally we have 2 business meetings and 1 study session per month. However, generally in December, many councils choose to skip the last meeting of the month and try to pack it all into the first 2. So if council chose to go that direction, the sooner we know, the better, so that we can plan around that and make sure to get all of our things in by the end of the year by that second meeting in December. So I just want to tee that up for you. And if that works for all of you, we will plan for that. If you'd like to hold on that decision, that's okay too.
Head nods or a vote?
Head nods are great. Okay, perfect. Thank you. We'll proceed.
Yeah, thank you so much, Scott. All right. Anyone else have anything? Cool. Councilmember Howe?
So Kent Treen and I both attended the Eastside Transportation Partnership meeting. There very little pertained to us, in fact, 0, which was just talk about I-5 and the work being done there, and a bunch of work being done at the Port of Seattle. But I do want to mention that I will be bringing forward legislative priorities for the council to review as it relates to transportation.
All right, thank you so much. Councilmember Stewart?
If you could get those to the committee, since we have a committee where we're working on those legislative priorities, so we can bring something comprehensive to the council to speed that along, given the timing, that would be awesome.
I will do my best to give you some background on it.
Great, thank you.
Great, dream team. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, 7-0, we are adjourned. Thank you.